everybody. Welcome to Learning the Scottish Great Highland Bagpipe with me, J.D. Ingram, pipe major of the Charleston Pipe Band. This week we're going to be learning
Lesson 1. Holding the chanter, playing notes by name and notation, and clean transitions. Your goal in this lesson is to be able to play any note by name or by musical notation and making clean transitions between different notes. We're going to focus on identifying and eliminating crossing noises. Your homework is to do note transition exercises, the siren exercise, and practice your scales. Extra resources are Sandy Jones' Beginning the Bagpipe, page 1 through 14, or the College of Piping Tutor, part 1, pages 9 through 19.
Alright, so you're getting your practice chanter together and you're not sure which one to get or what it even is that you've gotten. So there's different kinds of practice chanters. Most of them are going to be pretty similar. You might see them advertised as long, middle, short, or adult and child's. Doesn't really matter so much what the advertisement is. The whole spacing is going to be pretty consistent from practice chanter to practice chanter. What you're mostly going to notice is a difference in the length of the mouthpiece and potentially some accessories on the bottom. For instance, this one has a sole on the bottom. Doesn't do anything for the sound at all, just gives you something to rest your knee against and looks pretty. So if it's more expensive and you're trying to save money, don't worry about it so much. The three things you will definitely need is a mouthpiece, just a simple tube, the reed. This is a little white reed from Gibson. There's multiple different brands, some of them are red, some of them are white, almost all of them are plastic. Doesn't really matter as long as it's one that would come recommended by whoever's selling you your practice chanter. And then the practice chanter body that has all the holes in it. No matter what kind of body you have, the odds are the holes line up pretty well together. So let's zoom in a little bit and look at the fingers closely and how we're actually going to play this thing.
First things first, let's make sure we have a chanter to practice with. At this point in our learning, we don't need a full set of Highland bagpipes. Now that you've got your practice chanter, we're going to learn to pick up the darn thing. Pause the video for a second and take note of these tips.
First thing we're going to do is pick up the chanter. Go ahead and find the thumb hole on the back and cover it with your non-dominant hand thumb, fingertip pad. Then you'll use the fingertip pads for your index finger, middle finger, and ring finger from that hand. That leaves 4 more holes for you to use. Using your dominant hand, I would recommend starting with the pinky finger fingertip pad and then use the middle pad for your ring, middle, and index fingers. This enables you to keep your fingers flat. Curling up and using fingertips like this is bad form. You'll find you will be unable to cover the holes accurately most of the time and it will produce bad sound. Flat fingertips are better. You'll also notice that there's a very slight downward angle to both hands. You'll find that this is a good habit to get into because when you switch to the Highland bagpipes, your chanter is way out in front of you, you're reaching out towards it, and down below. And so reaching down to it, it will feel natural to be like this. If you've gotten in the habit of playing with your fingers flat or upwards, then it will be awkward to transition to the Highland pipes.
Now we're going to learn the scale as written for the bagpipes. Bagpipe music is written on a treble clef staff. The treble clef is that music-y looking symbol on the left-hand side of the staff, and the staff is the set of spaces and lines where your music notes can be written. It's not so much important to know the different kinds of clefs, other than the fact that there are other clefs out there that other musical instruments use basically as different kinds of musical language. On our treble clef staff, we have music notes that occur on lines. From bottom to top, they are E, G, B, D, and F, and notes that occur on spaces. These are F, A, C, and E. The space notes are easy to remember because they spell face. The line notes, I was taught, stand for every good boy deserves fudge. The bottom two notes, the E and the F, are below the range of the bagpipes, so you won't be seeing much of these anymore. We do have two notes above the staff. A high G sits on top of the staff, it is the space above, and a high A is the line above that. You will see high A's written with a very small line through them called a ledger line to denote that it is a line note up there. It's good habit to start practicing these if you don't already read music. Maybe print out this slide or a similar musical notation and practice identifying a note on the staff and know it by name and know it by fingering, which we will learn next.
Now that we've picked up the chanter, the first note we're going to learn is the low G. Keep all the holes covered, give a good puff of air through there, and it should sound like this. Nice resonant low sound. Two things that might happen: if you underblow, you'll get a squirrely kind of sound, and if you blow too hard, it will either stop or it will squeal. Squealing sometimes happens if you're not covering the holes exactly right as well. It's not something I can replicate exactly well, but I'll point it out if I do.
On this and subsequent images, go ahead and pause the video for a second and write out the finger positions and what the note looks like when written on the music staff.
After we've managed to make a good low G sound, we can move on to low A and B. Low A is created by picking up your pinky, and B, picking up the next finger. Both of these should still sound nice and resonant. Be careful not to overblow or underblow, and make sure the holes are covered, or you'll get little weird sounds like that.
Here's another good time to pause and take notes.
Finishing up the bottom hand notes, we've completed playing through B. Going up to C and D, you want to put your pinky back down and then pick up the next finger for C, and the last finger on your bottom hand for D. It's worth noting that the C will sometimes be noted as a C sharp. That's not a different note. We only have a C sharp in a typical bagpipe scale. If there is an important distinction to be made, they will typically note a C natural, which is done cross-fingered with your ring finger down, but you would probably not see that much, if ever.
Here's another good time to pause and take notes.
Moving on to the top hand notes. Whenever you're playing a top hand note, anything with your non-dominant hand up here, your bottom hand is going to be doing what I call the home position. The home position is as if you're playing a low A. Pinky up, everything else down. The first top hand note is E. You just put your home position on the bottom hand and a ring finger. F, pick up one more finger. G, pick up one more finger. And that leaves us with only one more note.
Here's another good time to pause and take notes.
The last note is the high A. The high A is a top hand note, so we'll have our bottom hand in the home position. And for the high A, you leave your ring finger down. So if you're coming from G, the ring finger comes down and then your thumb comes off the hole. It's the highest note that can be played on the bagpipes, and typically, no matter what you're doing down here, if your high A thumb hole is open, it's going to sound like a high A. The reason we put the ring finger down is so that you don't take your entire hand off the chanter, because odds that you're going to close all of the holes correctly is pretty slim to none, unless you get lucky.
Here's another good time to pause and take notes. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of clean transitions. Take note of the different kinds of crossing noises.
There are three kinds of crossing noises that we're going to try to avoid like the plague. The first we call the lift drop, or the major crossing noise. Those most commonly happen from hand to hand. For instance, going from D to E. This happens when you drop before you lift, and you end up with a low note sounding in between the two notes that we're trying to sound. So if we're going cleanly from D to E, but if I drop too soon, we have that unwanted low sound in the middle. The low sounds stand out particularly bad on the Highland bagpipes because those are louder notes than the high hand notes. The next crossing noise is the rolling, or sometimes called intermediate crossing noise. This is when you have to pick up multiple fingers together and you pick up one and then the other. A good example of this is going from low G up to B. If your pinky comes up first, you're playing a low A in the middle of your low G and your B. Cleanly, it sounds like this. But with that crossing noise, it would be like this. You want to avoid that as well. The last crossing noise is sometimes called a phantom or a false finger. The false fingering crossing noise is the opposite of the major lift-drop crossing noise. In my original example of D to E, if I lift and it takes me a while before I drop, I'm briefly playing an out-of-tune E. Remember, your fingers are covering these holes for a reason, to keep the notes in tune. So that this would sound like a good example, and an example with a false finger crossing noise. On the practice chanter, you can just barely hear a small difference. On the Highland pipes, the difference is much more noticeable, that E is very out of tune. Ways to avoid this happening in your play is to just practice going back and forth between notes like a siren. A lot of people call it the siren exercise because you sound like a European police or ambulance siren. Going from D to E. Making sure that each one is clean. If you still have trouble, practice control of your crossing noises. Do them on purpose and then make them smaller each time. So if I had a bad lift-drop crossing noise between D and E, I could do that on purpose. And then I could do it smaller. And then even smaller. And then finally get rid of it. Those are some good strategies to make sure all your note transitions are clean.
Reach out to me directly for your very own copy of the Charleston Pipe Band Chords warm-up worksheet, and also read through whichever supplemental book you have, either Beginning the Bagpipe by Sandy Jones or the College of Piping Tutor, and pay attention to what they have to say about your finger positions, reading the notes, and general good habits when understanding the music.